Morning. Today we're going to finish up Ruth, and we're going on to 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. It's going to be our next stop. We're talking about Ruth, and we have the story of Boaz. Ruth and Naomi come back from Moab, and Ruth and Naomi feels that God has dealt with her very bitterly, and she lost her husband and 2 sons. And Ruth comes back to the homeland of Naomi, and people greet them. Now you have to understand that in those times, a woman's livelihood was her husband. That's where the husband worked. He did, whatever he did. Women did not work outside the house, outside the home. They did, they raised the kids, they cooked, they baked, they couldn't go down and be a secretary, or they couldn't go and work in the mine, or they couldn't go over to where I work and work at All Clad like they do today. And today, whoever you are, you can do whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you're able to do it. And last week we said, well, how do they eat? How do you get food? So I have to understand, Naomi was an older lady, now evidently not able to go out in the fields and work. So Ruth goes out to glean, and this is, you go behind the pickers, and whatever falls on the ground or whatever is left, that's for you. You can pick it. And so she's, Ruth's out gleaning the fields, and Boaz shows up and says, hey, he asks his foreman, who's the girl? And the foreman says, this is Naomi's daughter-in-law, came back, she's the Moabitess, she came back. And now you have to understand, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. He's already heard about her, doesn't know who she is, but her story has preceded her, that she has taken care of Naomi, that she is supported, she's been supportive, and Boaz calls over his foreman, and he tells the guys that are out there picking, he says, you make sure that you leave stuff on the plants and that you drop some so that she has a whole bunch more than she would normally have. We're going to take care of this girl. And then lunchtime comes, and he tells her to come over, come and eat with us, and when you're thirsty, come and drink from the water that they had out in the fields. And Ruth goes over and she eats, and they had some kind of parched grain and vinegar stuff that helped you with the heat of the day and thirst. And she also takes some of what she had for herself and holds it back to take back to Naomi, so she can eat too. She's going to share. She doesn't have a lot. Okay, so that kind of brings us up to date. She goes back, and Boaz also talks to Ruth and says, you make sure you come here to my place, to my field, every day. You hang out with my maidservants, stay with them. I've told the guys to leave you alone. You're safe here. Okay, so, and Boaz is an older gentleman. He's a man of wealth. Wealth can also be translated as a man of valor. So now someplace over in the tail end of chapter 2 of Ruth. Chapter 2, verse 14. Now Boaz said to her at mealtime, "Come here and eat of the bread, and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed parched grain to her, and she ate and was satisfied, and kept some back. And when she rose up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Also let grain from the bundles fall purposefully for her. Leave it, that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned the field until evening, and beat out what she had gleaned, and there was about an ephah of barley, which is about half a bushel. So she's got a good bit. I mean, you're picking this stuff and shaking it out. You're winnowing it basically by hand. So anyway, and then she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, so she brought out and gave to her what she had kept back after she had been satisfied. This is like, some of Ruth's lunch. And the mother-in-law said to her, "Where have you gleaned today, and where did you work? Blessed be the one who took notice of you." So she's, Naomi is blessing the kindness, basically. So she said to her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not forsaken his kindness to the living and the dead." And Naomi said to her, "This man is a relation of ours, one of our close relatives." Ruth the Moabitess said, "He also said to me, you shall stay close to my young men until they have finished all my harvest." Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, and that people do not meet you in any other field." So she stayed close by the young men of Boaz to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Now, I want you to notice Naomi's reaction. She blesses the guy. She blesses him, which is a whole lot different than what I see today. The reactions that I see today is, well, he has a lot, and he owes it to you. He won't miss it. I should have some anyway. That's not true. It never was true. We have, in today's society, we call it entitlements. They have given this thing a name, entitlements, that they spin it. It's spun to make it sound like you are entitled to it. You are not entitled. God's economy does not entitle you to anything that you have not worked for.
Amen.
Amen, yeah, okay. But that does not mean that we should not be compassionate. That does not mean that we should not give. But we do not owe it. You do not owe me. I am loath to people putting their hand in my pocket and forcing me to give to what I would otherwise never give. That is not the way it ever was. Getting back to God's economy. God's pretty smart. God makes provision Naomi tells Ruth, this guy, this Boaz, is a close relative of ours. And we're going to come up with the kinsman redeemer thing. Chapter 3, and then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Therefore wash yourself and anoint yourself and put on your best garment and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Then it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. And she said to her, all that you say to me I will do. Now the story goes on. That you have to understand the life and times of Boaz and Ruth. This sounds, you just read this and you don't have background, it sounds sordid. It sounds like it's some kind of kinky thing. Ruth goes down, she uncovers his feet, lays down, she's sleeping there. He wakes up sometime during the night. Who are you? Tells him who she is. And she asks that he cover her with a piece of his garment. Now, in the life and times of Boaz and Ruth, this is a request. Now, in your book, I don't know what page it's on in your book, but there's a thing that says responsibility of the kinsman redeemer. The kinsman redeemer was a close relative. And in the culture of the time, if your brother or your relation, male relation, died and his wife was childless, it was your responsibility to care for her and to marry her and to have kids with her, to extend the dead guy's family line, and to take care of her. I mean, it kind of goes, you're going to be a wife. You have a couple things that well, anyway, there are a list of things that a kinsman redeemer was responsible for. He didn't have to do it. It was expected. If he was asked, there again, it's not. It doesn't just happen automatically. They don't just send some guy up to Boaz's storehouse and take some of his stuff and give it to Ruth and Naomi. This is something that he is going to do of his own free will. But she has to ask. And the act of going down to the threshing floor and uncovering his feet and asking that he cover her with part of his garment is the roundabout way in the culture of asking, will you perform the part of a kinsman redeemer? Now, in the book of Ruth, Boaz and some other guy, there's another guy that Boaz says, there is a closer relative that I am next in line after. I can't do what you're asking yet. Okay? He tells her to leave and don't tell anybody. And notice, he tells her, I'm not going to read all that because you don't have time. I hope you all read. Boaz accepts the challenge. He says, I'll perform this. You are very kind. You did not go after young men. So evidently, Boaz is an older guy. he says, give me your shawl. And he takes a shawl, hold your shawl, and he fills it up with bunch of grain. And he's got like 3 bushelsfuls in there, or bushel and a half. Was it 3 ephahs? Whatever it is, he gives her a whole bunch of grain.
And
tells her,
the barley.
yeah, and this is the finished stuff. Okay, this is what they were doing down on the threshing floor. They brought it all down, they threshed it, now it's got all this junk, and they winnow it, they throw it up in the air, and the chaff blows away. Now you have the finished grain, and he's got a pile of it, and he's sleeping down there to protect his grain. I mean, this is how things were done. I mean, this is like the master. This is his stuff. He's not out picking it. He's down here protecting it. Okay, he's sleeping by a pile of grain. It's my grain. And he says, I will go and check out the guy that has a closer relationship than I do, and I'll get back to you. Now, you remember when Naomi and Ruth first get back, and the women of the town say, oh, this is Naomi, you left a long time ago. Don't call me Naomi, call me what? Mara, because the Lord dealt bitterly with me. And the times change. This is not a long period of time. It's like a few months between the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, until these are done. I mean, she hasn't been back home for like years and years. What do you see in her attitude? In Naomi's attitude?
It's changed. I mean, she feels blessed now. You know, she feels that someone cares.
Yeah, somebody cares. Whose field were in? I was in this guy Boaz's. Hey, Boaz he's a near relative to us. Where's he going to be? He's saying he's going to be down on the threshing floor. They're going to winnow the grain. Now, Ruth, I want you to go down to the threshing floor and uncover his feet and lay down by. And Ruth says, "Okay, I'll do what you say." If kids would do what you say, yeah, not enough said. Ruth is smart enough to take advantage of Naomi's wisdom. Naomi's been around a long time. Even if you're stupid, you got to learn something. Just by virtue of being there. What's this?
There's so many practical applications.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, just by being there, just by being alive, you have to know more than the younger person. Not in everything. And how refreshing Ruth says, hey, what you say I will do.
See, Naomi knew all this custom of the day of the kinsman redeemer. Her husband Abimelech owned property there, and it was sold. So it was up to Boaz to buy back, quote, her property. And if any of them were sold as a slave, he was to buy back that slave. And he was to avenge anybody in the family who was murdered, and he was to marry a woman, a childless woman of Naomi, that would be Ruth, a childless widow of Naomi's son. He was as a kinsman redeemer. He was to redeem the property, the slave, and avenge any murder, and marry the widow of his brother's wife.
These are all the things.
That's what the kinsman redeemer does.
Now, Ruth can't know this stuff. No. She's not an Israelite. Naomi says, hey, Boaz is a close relative. I want you to go down, and as such, there's this thing called a kinsman redeemer, and go down and ask him to, cover you over, with a piece of his garment. In other words, will you, Boaz, fulfill the part of the kinsman redeemer to me? And Boaz says, I will, but there's somebody closer, ahead of me that is, I guess what, he comes before me. I have to ask him.
Yeah, first right.
Yeah, first
Whatever
right
you
of
want to call it.
rejection. There we go. So Ruth comes back and tells Naomi all this, and Naomi is, she's got some, she knows guys. She knows guys. Well, before we go about her, why do you suppose that Naomi chose Boaz for Ruth?
Well, I think it was the circumstances, because if you notice, whenever Ruth ended up in his field and she came home that first day, and she's like, well, where were you? And, where did you get all this stuff? So she knew that Boaz was interested and caring.
It was a setup question.
It was-
Yeah, she didn't choose him at all. God chose him.
Exactly.
Yeah, he got Ruth, or Naomi. I don't know if she's just picking up on this, but she knows a good thing. She's not stupid. She knows the custom. She understands that the man is interested in Ruth.
Seems like all the circumstances God is just bringing them
All the
together.
junk's coming together. And Naomi is like, let's just keep the ball rolling. This things are going right for a change. Let's keep it.
Like you said though, we have to look at this as God's plan, because the son that Ruth eventually had, Obed, begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. I didn't know that till I read. I didn't know this.
Yeah, a little further on down the line, you
Yeah.
have Christ.
Yeah.
That's when you think that it's like my circumstances are completely beyond my control. You're right. They are beyond your control. They're out of my control. They're not out of God's control. Do you believe that God has your best interest at heart?
Always.
Always, yeah. But how many times do I say, I want this, and I will have this, and I go and get that, and it's like, okay, now you have the nuclear bomb that you wanted, and it's going to critical mass, and you don't know how to turn it off. And God comes by and says, still want that? It's like, and some of us are really stupid. Yeah, I want the bomb. I want to blow up with the bomb. I want to be all irradiated to death and burned up. And Pastor Thomas, John Thomas, down at the church in Fredericktown, what is that?
Calvary Chapel.
Calvary Chapel does a thing, usually every year, about the potter and the clay. And he has this potter's wheel, and he's doing the stuff, and while he's talking, and he makes, he's really cool. He just like scoops it all up, and he's got this clay pot, and it's spinning around, and he's talking while he's doing this. And the piece of clay is saying, but I want this. And the clay pot jumps off the wheel. He pokes it. You don't see it, but he pokes it. It falls down. And he picks up his blob. and he throws it back on the wheel, and he's picking out the crud that got stuck in it, and he's fixing it. He's fixing it. This is a God. Even when we're disobedient, and even when we stand right next to the bomb and it blows up, and now we're all burned up and hurt and we're covered with crud, he comes and he starts picking out, but you learn. Hopefully you learn. Hopefully you learn. Naomi can see. She sees God working. And she knows human nature. She knows that Boaz is interested. And she tells Ruth what to do, who listens and does what she's told to do. And Boaz, in the exchange on the threshing floor, says that you're a virtuous woman. I know all this stuff. You've taken care of Naomi. He says, but go, don't tell anybody. Leave, before the sun comes up. Don't tell anybody yet. I'll go see the other guy. And so Boaz trots on over to the city gates and waits, and he gets 10 elders. These are going to be his witnesses, and he sees the unnamed other relative and says, hey, here's a girl named Ruth that you are a closer relative than I, and she needs a kinsman redeemer, and you want to buy back her ground. Yeah, that's cool. I want to buy her ground. He said, now this is like Columbo. It's like, and one more thing. If you buy back the land, you need to marry her and have kids with her. And the guy says, oh no, that'll mess up my inheritance. So if you want to do it, you go ahead, Boaz. You do it. Now, the guy's already committed himself. He says, I don't want. What's the polka? I don't want her. You can have her. She's too fat for me. That's like, yes, I gotta have this. I don't want to marry. I don't want to mess up my inheritance. I want my kids from my wives to have my stuff. I don't want to have another wife to divvy this up. And the deal is done there, and the contract he passes. Boaz gives unnamed other relative his sandal, which is the like in the old cowboy and Indian movies. You took the knife, and you cut your hand, and you were blood brothers. And then the elders at the gate are witnesses to this, and they bless the decision. They say to, this is over in the tail end of Ruth chapter 4, I think. Boaz redeems Ruth. Customer for times.
Where he removed his sandal?
No, and all the people, verse 11, all the people who were at the gate and elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel, and made you prosper in Ephrath and be famous in Bethlehem. Made your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman.
Wow.
I mean, you have to understand, this is all before it happened. They bless this upcoming wedding. Now, the rest of the story is Boaz and Ruth get married. They have Obed. Obed is named by the women of the town. I don't really understand why. I mean, but, that's usually you pick your own kids' names. And Obed begets Jesse, and Jesse begets David. Now, you have Boaz, who is, I know the way. Boaz is a guy, and he's an older guy, and he's thinking that a younger woman's not going to look at him. And he tells her that. He says, it's nice, you didn't go out, you didn't call on younger men, you didn't go running around, you were virtuous, you took care of your mother-in-law, you did all the things right. The whole town knows who you are and what you are, just like they know who I am and what I am. Me, I'm talking about Buzz, how people know who you are. They know you by your actions. You remember that Ruth came back with Naomi and says, where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die. Where you dwell, your God will be my God. Obviously, Ruth saw something in Naomi that made her a believer in the true God. They came back. Their reputation is stellar. And by the way, so is Boaz's reputation. He does it right. He says, he could have just stepped in and married her and hoped that nobody else said anything. He says, no, there's another relation who's closer than me. Let me tie up the loose ends first. Let's not get the cart before the horse. No, he's manipulative. And he goes in, now you got to marry her too, and you got to split up your inheritance and all that stuff. And then the guy just like kind of shrinks away.
He was given all the facts. That's all he was doing.
Yeah, it's just like, how do you couch the question? Why did Naomi choose? Why did Naomi choose Boaz? No, she didn't choose anything. She went with the program. She's it's like God is in control. God was in control when Naomi and Elimelech, her husband, and her kids left. And he was in control when they died. And he was in control when they decided to come back. And when Ruth just happens to be in Boaz's field, and Boaz just happens to take notice of her and has compassion on her and loves her and is willing to fulfill the obligation of the kinsman redeemer, it's not happenstance. Your life is not happenstance. Now, your life will go much better if you go with the program and you don't try to help God. I'm going to start throwing spitballs at you. Anyway, go with God's program. Be like Ruth. All that you say I will do, and do it. Don't renege. Don't back off of the good fight, the good race, the good whatever it is. God has our best interest at heart, and you need to trust Him. And you don't need to understand. See, because there's things that are just, if I was Naomi, I go and, my husband dies, and my kids get married, and they die. I can't understand that. I don't understand that. But Naomi was at least smart enough. Says, I'm going to go back home.
This is also a picture of salvation, because Naomi was absolutely helpless, defenseless. She, that's us. And then the kinsman redeemer steps in, who is Jesus, and purchases us, purchases all of our, purchased our salvation with his own blood. And, gives us, loves us. And it was all in his hands. And so Jesus is the picture, Boaz is a picture of Jesus, Naomi is a picture, and Ruth a picture of us.
We are helpless. They were helpless, and there's nothing to be said after that. That's the capstone on the lesson. So, cool. We're gonna go into the lesson next week.